The title I'm called is The Restoration of Israel. It's now just past Israel's 75th anniversary of their rebirth as a nation. As some of you know, on May 14th, 1948, Israel was reborn as a nation after 2,000 years, thereabouts. That was really a very unique event in human history. Consequently, Israel proclaimed Jerusalem to be a capital city. And shortly after the declaration of the State of Israel in 1948, never had a people who have lost their statehood later became a nation after such a long period of time. 2,000 years. Furthermore, this is the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. And I want you to know that the prophecy of God's word is coming to pass in our life very fast now. You are the generation. I think you know that. Now in Matthew 24, verse 32 to 35, it says this, from the fig tree. Now the fig tree always represents Israel. So from the fig tree, learn this lesson. As soon as its young shoots become soft and tender, and it puts out its leaves, you know of a surety that summer is near. So also when you see these signs all taken together coming to pass, you may know of a surety that he is near at the very doors. Truly I tell you, this generation, the whole multitude of people living at the same time in a definite given period, will not pass away till all these things taken together take place. Sky and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Now, Israel's rebirth was the most momentous prophetic fulfillment in recent history. As they became an independent nation again in their former homeland, against all odds, after being scattered throughout the world since their rejection of Jesus, destruction of the temple and Jerusalem in 70 AD, the Jews were banished from their land for centuries. However, Isaiah and Ezekiel, other prophets, predicted that after many years and in the last days, right now, they would return. These are the last days. Amen? I'm excited because I know where I'm going. Listen, Isaiah even asked in Isaiah 66, verse 8, who has heard such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall the earth be made to give birth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? The answer is, yes, it can. It was. Amen? Now, after 1,800 years of desolation, the restoration of Israel's ancient and modern history was happening all at once. Also, one of Ezekiel's famous prophecies is now being fulfilled, just as he said it would 2,000 years ago. 2,600 years ago, rather. All right? Right now, near the heart of Israel, a desert road leads to the lowest place on earth. It's what the Bible calls the Salt Sea. It's a good name for a body of water that is 10 times saltier than any other ocean in the earth. Now, as little can live in that environment, no vegetation can grow with salt water. Now, the Romans themselves named it the Dead Sea. Did you know that? That's true. Now, in chapter 47 of Ezekiel, who prophesied while in exile in Babylon from 597 BC, before Christ, all right? The prophet described a vision of increasingly deep river flowing from the temple in Jerusalem down towards the Dead Sea, bringing new life wherever it flowed and supporting the same kind of fish as those in the Mediterranean area sea, all right? Now, this is what Ezekiel wrote. It's Ezekiel 47, verse 8 to 10. He said to me, this water flows towards the eastern region and goes down into the Jordan Valley, where it enters the sea, which we now call the Dead Sea. When it empties into the sea, the water there becomes fresh. Swarms of living creatures will live wherever the river flows. There will be large numbers of fish because this water flows there and makes the salt water fresh. So where the river flows, everything will live. Fishermen will stand along the shore from En-gedi to En-galim. There will be places for spreading nets. The fish will be of many kinds, like the fish of the great sea, the Mediterranean. Isn't that interesting? Now, this vision comes in the latter part of the book, dealing with the promised restoration of Jewish people, both to their land and finally to the Lord. Now, fresh water is now flowing into this valley that has been unable to support life since the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. That was thousands of years ago. And freshwater fish have now been seen swimming in surrounding sinkholes that have opened up in recent years. But now there's a change coming very quickly. In short, the Dead Sea is coming alive, slowly but surely. Now, we've got a short video.
What you see here, you see the wall, like you saw when we came with the boat. We actually are now, right now, over a sinkhole. Sinkholes in the Dead Sea is a result of fresh water that are going under the ground, meeting the sediment layers, and this is all the white that you see out here on the beach, and melting them. Okay? When they melt them, they create a cavity. Now, if we have a freshwater spring that is going under the sea, and it's going through sediment layers, it will melt them. So we do have sinkholes that also occur under the water.
Fresh water on the shoreline of the Dead Sea. Look at this. And this is pretty recent, right?
Yeah, these are actually sinkholes, what we're seeing over here.
Okay.
So on one hand, it's a devastating aspect of the land violently, causing huge holes.
Kind of an environmental disaster, I guess you would say, right?
An environmental disaster. On the other hand, it's a beautiful aspect of it.
It's a little oasis here.
At the same time, this is fresh water. These sinkholes are basically fresh water
Gotcha.
that are melting the sediments of the water itself, of the salts, causing cavities and having basically the earth to collapse.
So that's what causes the sinkhole.
Correct. And some of these sinkholes, again, the different colors that we saw beforehand, is because of the different minerals that are in the sinkholes themselves.
And they're popping up all along the shoreline of the Dead Sea.
Actually, one of the most rapid places in the world you have over here of the sinkholes, which are causing disasters. We have to close down roads, beaches because of that.
Near the Dead
No
Sea.
infrastructure of this region because no insurance company will give you a place to build
Yeah.
anything. On the other hand, again, this is the contrast of it, all the life coming out from these sinkholes.
Wow.
I mean, we just heard birds. You have bird migration right over
Yeah,
here.
it's a
Look at all
marsh
this
here.
vegetation.
Yeah, there's lush vegetation here. There's birds. We hear them chirping in the background. There's massive migration coming through here, Noam. And there has been sightings, including by yourself, of fish.
Yeah, correct. In this single
this freshwater?
specifically, actually,
Yeah.
we saw some small fish. We do not see them right now.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, the
They're hiding.
fact you have vegetation just shows that salinity went down here, and you can actually have living creatures over here.
I think of the book of Zechariah that says, waters will flow from Jerusalem to the eastern sea. This is to the east of Jerusalem, the Dead Sea. And you think of the book of Ezekiel, chapter 47, Noam, it talks about the salt sea becoming fresh, of fishermen working at the Dead Sea. And we see a glimpse of this now coming to fruition. Look, this is fresh water in front of us on the shoreline of the Dead Sea. You get a chance to see this up close. This is amazing. What do you think of all this? Special.
This is exactly it. Experiencing prophecy coming true, being part of it, being involved with it is something so spiritually uplifting. And yeah, this is what we're seeing right now. You see with your own eyes this beautiful vegetation happening here. Just shows that there is life coming out from the Dead Sea. And sometimes when we're lucky, we can literally see fish coming out from these different sinkholes.
And you've captured still photos of them. You do great still photography here on a regular basis.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, this is what I do. It's to document, to keep on the explorer, to document. And my first time I came out here, I literally saw fish and I took those pictures, not realizing these pictures, what kind of significance this has to the entire world, spiritual world.
You know, the God of Israel is moving, and Israel, his land, is at the center of it. It's amazing to see. And what a privilege to be here, Noam. Thank you so much,
Very much welcome.
for bringing us inside the miracles that are taking place at the Dead Sea today. It was a real privilege, my friend. Keep up the great work. We'll see you here again soon on the boat.
Yeah.
Noam, thank you so much, my friend.
Fantastic.
Noam Badin, absolutely amazing. He is on the front lines of what God is doing in his land today, including here at the Dead Sea. An unlikely, but man, what a significant story. The Dead Sea, the shoreline of the Dead Sea, coming to life.
Well, today the Dead Sea is beginning to change, all right? It's so clear. Isn't that exciting? All the prophecies of God are now coming together, all right? Now, in the last 20 years, and for the first time ever, sinkholes are beginning then to appear around the Dead Sea. Now, a life-giving green color is starting to appear more and more near the Dead Sea. Now, Ezekiel predicted this, that the Dead Sea will be filled with fresh water and men will fish out of it. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? After thousands of years. Right back to Sodom and Gomorrah's day. Now, with this dispensation of the Jewish people around the world and the loss of their homeland, it's interesting. Hebrew is the only language in history that was practically dead and then revived to become a common language again. This was a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Zephaniah 3 verse 9 says, "For then I will restore to the people a pure language, that they all may call on the name of the Lord to serve him with one accord." Imagine, hundreds of years ago, the world considered Hebrew to be a dead language. And today it is being studied by millions of people around the world. You can even download it. And Jesus said in Matthew 24, verse 34, "Verily I say unto you, this generation," you and I, "shall not pass away till these things be fulfilled." Now, I find that very exciting, to live in the history of the world, don't you? Getting understanding spiritually. 80% of Ezekiel's prophecies have already come to pass. That's interesting too. And Jerusalem is very important part of end-time events. So we need to consider the question, well, who owns Jerusalem? Whose capital is it? Now, it's interesting that the word Jerusalem is found 667 times in the Bible, but it's never mentioned in the Quran. Now, according to the Bible, Jerusalem is the Lord's city. It's got a glorious future on this earth when Jesus Christ returns to live and reign from there as king. At that time, light will go out to the nations from Jerusalem through Christ. Ezekiel 48:35 says, "And the name of that city will be, the Lord is there." Now, nothing demonstrates how God keeps his promise better than the story of the nation of Israel. The restoration of Israel is one of the most controversial political issues of the century. Palestinians have claimed that the land is theirs, and they say the Jews have no right to even 1 square foot of it. Did you know that? Although the area has been under the control of Turkish government, and it was for some 400 years, it was never under Palestine control. So just who does own the land? Do the Jews or do the Palestinians? Do they have the right to control the land in occupied West Bank areas? Although the United Nations established the State of Israel in 1948, most of the world no longer supports Israel. The governments of the world regret giving them any territory in the Middle East. The controversy rages today as much as it ever did. Now, the children of Abraham are still fighting it out, okay? If the fate of the nation of Israel was placed in the hands of the human court, the verdict would probably be disastrous. Time and time again, the United Nations have taken the side of the Arabs against Israel. While dedicated Christians around the world are in favor of Israel's existence, most governments are not. Now, the main political ally on the side of Israel is the United States, by the Christian people over there. On 6th of December 2017, the then US President Donald Trump announced that the US would recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Remember that? On May the 14th, 2018, the US Embassy was transferred from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem itself. But when the US President, Joe Biden, visited Israel and Palestine in 2022, this last year, his delegation removed the Israeli flags from their vehicle upon entering East Jerusalem. In a move widely interpreted as signaling non-recognition of Israel's sovereignty over East Jerusalem. That's what they were really saying. Isn't that amazing? Australia, God bless them, has now reversed our previous government's recognition of West Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Clearly, there's confusion, there's political correctness in the Western nations. That's why the Western nations are going down quick, all right? No one can find a political solution for Jerusalem's problem, okay? This is foretold in the end-time prophecy. Zechariah 12, verse 3 says this, I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all the peoples. All who would heave it away will be cut in pieces. However, God created this earth. Guess what? He's the right to ownership of it, hasn't he? Yes. Psalm 24:1 says, the earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. However, there's one special area to which God lays a unique claim. It is the land of Israel. Now, there are several places in the Bible where God calls the land, my land. God calls it his land. For instance, in Ezekiel 38:16, God condemns the mighty Gog and Magog for the invasion of his land. Now, Gog, just in case you don't know, is the leader of Russia. And you will attack my people Israel, covering the land like a cloud. At that time, in the distant future, I will bring you against my land as everyone watches, and my holiness will be displayed by what happens to you, Gog. Then all the nations will know that I am the Lord. He calls the land of Israel his land. That claim is repeated in Joel chapter 3, verse 2. It says, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. Now, this is at the end of tribulation, of course. And will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage, Israel, whom they have scattered amongst the nations and parted my land. Now, both of those verses pronounce that we just had judgment upon the Gentile nations of the world for their part in denying Jews a right to live in his land. Now, notice that God calls Israel my people. He calls their land my land. Now, God is the absolute owner of the land, and as such, and every right to evict the Jewish people 20 centuries ago. Now, you know why they did that, don't you? Because they crucified the Messiah. They had him crucified, okay? The Romans did the crucifixion, but the religious system condemned him. Now, you know that story, I'm sure. But he also, if God had the right to expel them, he's got the right to bring them back. And that's exactly what he's done, because that's what he said in his word. All right? God is sovereign over the land of Israel. Praise God. Now, Genesis 17, verse 7 to 8, determines God's sovereign disposition over his land. He said, I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you in their generations, for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and your descendants after you. Also, I give to you and your descendants after you the land in which you were a stranger. Okay? All the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. Now, A covenant was declared and recorded 4,000 years ago. But the Arabs also claimed to be descendants of Abraham. Does not the land then also belong to them? The Arabs are descendants of Ishmael, while the Jews are descendants of Abraham's other son, Isaac. Now in Genesis 26, 3-4, God narrows down the covenant to exclude the children of Ishmael. Now Genesis 26, 3-4, it says, it was to Isaac that God said, dwell in this land, I will be with you, I will bless you, for to you and your descendants I give all these lands. And I will perform the oath which I swore to Abraham your father, and I will make your descendants multiply as the stars of heaven. I will give you your descendants all these lands, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Israel is a tiny little strip, isn't it? I'll give you the dimensions later, but God's going to expand it massively. Isn't that interesting? Notice that God not only promised Isaac the land called Israel, but he gave the scriptures declaring to be all these lands. He used the term twice in his promise to Isaac. Jacob's inheritance, all right? Now wait a minute, Isaac had two sons, didn't he? Jacob and Esau. Do they not also have a claim to the land? God made it clear they do not. He narrowed the inheritance of the land to Jacob and his descendants. Genesis 35, verses 10-12 tell you. And God said to him, your name is Jacob. Your name shall not be called Jacob anymore, but Israel shall be your name. So he called his name Israel. Also God said to him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful, multiply, a nation and a company of nations shall proceed from you, and kings shall come from your body. The land which I gave Abraham and Isaac I give to you, and to your descendants after you I give this land. Well, the proclamation is very clear. God has promised the land to Jacob and his descendants, namely the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, when we consider these three covenants together, the line of descent through which the land is promised is evident. In each case, God narrowed down his promise of the land from Abraham to Isaac, to Jacob, and then to his descendants after him. Now, in view of these covenants made by the God of heaven, which, with the people of Israel, as people who claim to believe the Bible, we stand without reservation on the side of Israel. Agree? You'd better, but you might not go. We agree with Israel. We might think they're peculiar people, and to us they are a little different. But they've been under persecution for thousands of years. Remember that. Europe especially. And I'm not kidding either. Still to this day. Now the psalmist wrote in Psalm 105, verse 7, He is the Lord our God. His judgments are in all the earth. Do you believe this? Well, the following verses say this. Psalm 105, verses 7 to 11. He is the Lord our God. His judgments are in all the earth. He remembers his covenant forever, the word which he commanded for 1,000 generations. The covenant which he made with Abraham and his oath to Isaac, and confirmed it to Jacob for a statute, to Israel as an everlasting covenant, saying to you, I will give the land of Canaan as the allotment of your inheritance. Now, the writer of this psalm emphasized two very important points here. First, he left no doubt as to the line of descent through which the promises of the land is given. It's from Abraham to Isaac, to Jacob and his posterity. That means his future, family. Secondly, he spoke of the covenant as being God's own covenant. He called it the word which he commanded. He said it was his oath unto Isaac. He referred to it as an everlasting covenant. How can you be more emphatic than that? Also, he declared the covenant unto 1,000 generations. That would take at least 20,000 years. We haven't had that yet. Yes, we must conclude the land of Israel has been given by God to the people of Israel, to the descendants of Jacob. However, we know the people were evicted from their land by the landlord, God, almost 2,000 years ago. And the prophet Jeremiah wrote in chapter 30, verse 3, "For behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, that I will bring back from captivity my people Israel and Judah, says the Lord. And I will cause them to return to the land that I gave to their fathers, and they shall all possess it." There is only one area of land in all the earth that fits that description. It is the land of Israel. Now notice God spoke of the captivity, my people Israel and Judah. And he said they would return to the land that I gave to their fathers. He said they would possess the land. Well, if God says it, they will and have. Then there was Ezekiel, who wrote in chapter 36, verse 24, "For I will take you from among the heathen." Did you know we're considered as the heathen? That's if you're not born again. "Gather you out of all countries, and I will bring you into your own land." This is clearly a prophecy concerning the last days of world history, when the Jews will return to his land, and Jesus Christ, the Messiah, will come then to establish a world kingdom. We're going to be part of that. Now, I'll just add a little extra here. You know, if you believe in a rapture, it takes 7 years. We're not appointed unto wrath. Well, that's good enough for me. But I believe that 7 years in heaven, we will be taught to come back, because we're going to come reign and rule with Christ. I guarantee you, we'll have an education given to us spiritually. And you'll have a mind that can observe everything then. Amen. Have you noticed as you get older, you forget dates and different things? Well, if you're over 50, you know what I'm talking about. Okay. Now, when God promised to bring Israel back to the land at the close of the age, he called it your own land. Now, in God's sight, the ownership of the land has never changed and never will. Well, he gave it to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, and to his descendants, the people of Israel. Amos concluded his book with a similar prediction. He said in Amos 9:15, "I will plant them in their land. They shall be no more pulled out of their land, which I've given them, says the Lord your God." So Russia's not going to defeat them. The Arab nations are not going to defeat them. Oh, they'll cause them trouble, but they'll never defeat them. They'll never be expelled from their land. That's interesting. Now, it's obvious to all that understand the Bible that God did predict very clearly that God will plant them in their land, upon their land, all right? It's obvious to all who believe the Bible that the hand of God can be seen in all this. Now, in what must be considered as the incredible miracle of the last century, the return of the Jews to their own land. That was amazing. Now, these prophecies were given from 2,500 to 4,000 years ago. And people say, oh, the Bible's just made up. Well, isn't it amazing that all these things are coming true? It cannot be modified today, what God has said, by the United Nations, any radical Islamic group, or one world order. God has decreed that Israel is the land of the Jews. Now, these scriptures do not simply imply the restoration of Israel, they declare it. That's interesting. God, through his foresight, knew that such moves would be opposed by the Arab world. Therefore, he emphasized Israel's absolute right to the land. It's theirs, gift from God. Now, why should God be concerned? Why should he be concerned with such a small land? Do you know it's 64 kilometers by 193 kilometers? That's all it is. Well, first of all, he's a covenant-keeping God. When God promises something, he follows through with it. Now, if God did not keep that covenant, how can we expect him to keep anything he promised us? Do you understand? Secondly, that little spot on the globe happens to be the land bridge spanning 3 continents: Europe, Asia, and Africa. It's a strategic location for political as well as spiritual control of our planet. But there's another reason. It was given by Moses in Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. When the Most High, that's God, divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. The Lord not only established the land of Israel for the Jew, but he established the borders of every nation under the sun. He chose the amount of land for each nation according to the population that nation will eventually attain. Now, it's also true of Israel. God has given his chosen people just enough land to take care of Israel's intended and ultimate population. All right? Then the Apostle Paul said basically the same thing when he spoke to the men of Athens in Acts chapter 17, verse 26. And he has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings. God has not only determined then where the nation shall dwell, but when they shall dwell there. That's interesting, isn't it? It all revolves around God's dealing with Israel. Now, any plan that supports the giving away of Israel's land to their enemies, or a plan that does not support them in keeping the land, we'd have to say is opposed to the Lord. Amen? Being opposed to God's plan is not a good place to be. God has a plan. We owe a lot to Israel, whether you understand it or not. If there had been no Israel, there would have been no patriarchs, no prophets, no apostles, no Bible, no Savior. We'd be on a downward track. Now in John 4:22, Jesus himself summed up all of this in one simple statement. He said, "For salvation is of the Jews." Isn't that interesting? Regardless of our nationality, where we've all come from, we owe a debt to the Jewish people that can never, ever be calculated. But from at least the 4th century forward, the Christian church consistently treated the Jewish people with contempt, injustice, and cruelty. The Catholic Church believed that the Jewish people were responsible for the crucifixion of Christ. Christ came so he could die on that cross. God had ordained that for him so we could be saved. That's why we're here tonight. We wouldn't be here otherwise, and we wouldn't be going to heaven otherwise one day. But we are. Praise God. Now, you've heard of Martin Luther, haven't you? All right. He first published his teaching. He anticipated that the Jewish people would be convinced by it and would convert to Christianity. When this did not happen, Luther was disappointed and bitter. He almost became anti-Jewish. During the 1930s, the Nazis, if any of you are here, will forgive you, Hitler's Germany used the statements by Martin Luther to advocate their anti-Semitic policies. Did you know that? Yeah. But even the evil of Hitler and the Nazis couldn't wipe God's people out. God is in control. God cares about his people. And God is in the restoration business. If you need anything restored in your life, he can do that for you also. And he wants to do that for his believers. If the examples of the Dead Sea, the Hebrew language teaches anything, it is that God is the one who restores life to the dead. Now, the same promise of restoration holds true for all of us. John 5:21 says, "For just as the Father raises the dead, gives them life, even so the Son gives life to whom he is pleased to give it." Now, although this has been a message about Israel, I want you to be encouraged. If God can restore a nation in a day, revive a dead language, he can revive and restore anything that you're believing as well. Now, we have the Word of God. And I would suggest start reading the book of Revelation. Start with all the messages to the churches. Just read it slowly. Ask God to help you. to understand it. The Holy Spirit will enlighten you. Because we need people today that have some knowledge about end times to share with people. The media is sharing about end times and the progress in the direction the world's going, but they've got it wrong. I suppose even Christian programs, television, are a bit afraid to go too far. More freedom in America, but I think here it'd be a little difficult. Our government do not respect Christianity, really. Okay? Persecution's coming to the churches. I don't mean shooting you, killing you, imprisoning you, but pressure not to do certain things. Amen? Aren't you glad you're born again? You should be, because I get excited by it. We're in this generation now. We don't know when he's coming, but he's coming. We'll wake up one day and we'll be, phew. Wouldn't that be great? Greater than the eagles. Glory to God.